Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, Bella Zaydenberg returns to the show to discuss 1949's Adam's Rib. Our guest today is an editor and returning guest to the show, and the Amanda to my Adam. Bella Zaydenberg is here today to talk about Adam's Rib. Bella, thank you for returning to the program.
Thank you for having me. I feel like that was the best compliment you ever gave me, so I'll take it.
I don't know, it sounded like an insult to me, but we'll get into why I think that in the episode.
Oh no.
This is gonna be very fun for me, because in some sense,
I can get her, drive her crazy, and then when we all X out, you'll realize the call was coming from inside the house. And I get to go to sleep.
No, because
this is an angry woman.
What I think is really good about all of this is I didn't realize it until Tom said that, but I've realized I'm on camera right now with two people for whom, if I'm watching a movie and there's a conflict between a man and a woman, right? Where like a man's a bit of like I'm a rough and tumble chauvinist, and the woman's a bit of a plucky like, oh, I'm not going to let a man boss me around type. If I am watching a movie and I'm discussing it with Tom, there's always going to be a point where he goes, I on this show, people can count the number of times, I just got to say it. She was fucking annoying. Meanwhile, any movie, book, anything I watch with Bella that involves any conflict between a man and a woman, up to and including murder, Bella will still immediately go, I mean, I think she's got a point.
And
I think
she
she's
kind of deserved it. He deserved it.
Listen, don't paint me with that kind of fucking brush like I'm on the Ghostbusters fucking message boards or whatever. Asshole. No. Listen, we'll get into it. But okay. My thing with this, in this case, is that she doesn't have a point. If it was an actual, like, she shot her husband while he was beating her instead of following him around the city, and which, again, this is just a great detail. Having to read an instruction manual on how to use a revolver. So good. Love that.
Why does he need to hit her in order for it to be justified?
Because
we have time for that. We can't start here.
Because nothing's happening.
We cannot start here. This is gonna be.
They didn't kill him.
Guys, it's been 100 episodes. We have learned how to start a movie. How to start a discussion of a movie, and it is definitely not immediately with the most controversial point, okay? I refer our audience to the incident of Chinatown and the 15-minute edited down intro. But a discussion that got so intense that even Tom afterward went, listen, I don't listen to the show, but, I don't know how well some of that's going to play. We can't start there. We're going to start with a simpler question. Which is Tom and Bella, to both of you guys, I'll answer after, but it's kind of threefold on this one. Because obviously we're talking about Adam's Rib, but it also means we're talking about Tracy and Hepburn. In the case of our show, this is, I think, unless I'm wrong, this is our second Katherine Hepburn movie, and this is our first Spencer Tracy. So I want to just go around to both of you guys. Before we did this, what was your familiarity with Adam's Rib? What was your familiarity with Spencer Tracy, and what was your familiarity with Katherine Hepburn? Whoever wants to take that first can go with that.
I knew Katherine Hepburn. I was not quite as familiar with Spencer Tracy, who I, up until maybe a couple months ago, kept calling Dick Tracy. Very different people. And Adam's Rib, Mike, you and I watched it together a very long time ago, not in preparation for anything, just for fun, and I really enjoyed it then, and obviously I watched it again in preparation for this. But yeah, I didn't know much about their relationship up until I picked up a book by Garson Kanin, and like they're just really fun.
So didn't know about this movie. I know who the director was, George Cukor. but I never heard of this movie, so I went in just completely blind, and it's like, oh, it's a Hepburn Tracy movie, cool. I knew Hepburn. Obviously, we did Bringing Up Baby.
Bringing Up Baby, yeah,
Bringing Up
season
Baby.
2,
right? Yeah, I was like, which Hawks Hepburn thing? Or okay, yeah. So I'd seen that. I'd seen African Queen. I read a book about Howard Hawks, not Howard Hawks, Howard Hughes, and like the women that he kind of ran through in his life, and Hepburn is a big part of that, which then obviously means Spencer Tracy becomes a part of that. But I never seen any Spencer Tracy movies up to this point. For some reason, Bad Day at Black Rock has been like one of the bigger movies I've kind of always been like, oh, I should watch that. Everyone I know says like that's one of the great like genre movies, like Pulp Fiction stories ever committed to film. The commentary that was recorded for the Criterion Laserdisc that doesn't exist anymore. Everyone always talked about as like a film school on a Laserdisc. So Spencer Tracy's a guy that I knew of, had some inklings of what his thing was, but yeah, just never got to his stuff until now. And I'm definitely putting Bad Day at Black Rock on the to watch pile now, which I'll definitely get to a lot quicker because we're almost done with this fucking season, and I can watch other goddamn movies that isn't related to this fucking stuff.
I do like that because and I like that you bring that up, Tom, the way you say we're almost done with this, fucking season, because I do think another nice thing about having both Tom and Bella on an episode is it's a fun pairing of who on mic and off mic pretends they don't like doing this show more. It's really fun in some cases, how often in both cases, like, must I do this? For me...
I volunteered, excuse me.
Yeah, no, I mean, most times when people you volunteered like somebody who got the man from the drafts board calling last minute, went, fine, I guess. Yeah. Sign me up.
I did it out of the goodness of my heart.
So this is interesting because I'd always heard the name, like the pairing Tracy and Hepburn, right? I had always heard it because I read a lot of that old Hollywood stuff. I grew up with a lot of old Hollywood stuff. So I'd often heard Tracy and Hepburn, right? In fact, and Tom, you may get a laugh out of this, I had heard the name Tracy and Hepburn for so long. I had heard that referred to as like the great Hollywood pairing of Tracy and Hepburn and like this great storied romance that I had assumed for the longest time that there was a similar Hollywood romance between James Cagney and someone named Lacey. I did not know about the 80s cop show. And I just, as a little kid, I would go around two adults and talk about, Tracy and Hepburn, Cagney and Lacey, the greats. So,
So, another one of those stories that you tell where it makes one question where you've gotten your self-righteous ego from.
Yeah. Well, Tom,
because that is dumb.
Those iconic. I was probably, again, I was like maybe like 6 or 7.
That's not.
But it does just no, it's not exactly. Tom, I love that your approach to 7-year-olds is the only time you have something similar to Donald Trump is that you two have a vibe with 7-year-olds like he did on that phone call of 7. You're still talking about Santa. That's marginal at that age, right? You seem like you're a bit off.
Santa's fine.
Agony and I should.
But just because,
so you're saying, so a 7-year-old it's okay if they believe in Santa, but if a 7-year-old is not aware of the 1982 police procedural Cagney and Lacey,
because where are you hearing people constantly refer to Cagney and Lacey enough that you think it is an iconic couple?
Honestly, on The Simpsons, like here's on The Simpsons, like it was just the thing. It's just like that other iconic Hollywood couple, Jake and the Fat Man. Anyway, but
you poor boy.
So I had heard of Tracy and Hepburn, and I had certainly seen Katherine Hepburn in things, and I had even seen Spencer Tracy in things. But the weird thing was, when I was starting to get into classic film, if it wasn't something that my parents rented, my first dip into classic cinema was the AFI 100 list, that original AFI 100 list, not the 10th anniversary one, which amongst people who paid attention to those kind of things, that's a big distinction to make. But that original list, and it did not have a Tracy Hepburn movie in it. Like, it just was not on the list. To that same degree, I would note that, we've talked about this before. We talked about it even this season, Tom, with like Footlight Parade and saying like, well, Footlight Parade's great, but also you can tell they were saying like, well, we have to get a Busby Berkeley movie in, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, like, I hadn't seen Adam's Rib until, as Bella mentioned, like she and I watched it together. I had not seen it before that. Because I think, again, it wasn't on an AFI list. It wasn't anything my parents rented. The first Tracy Hepburn movie, and for a long time the only Tracy Hepburn movie that I ever saw, was Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which is kind of like starting at the end. It feels very odd to say that's my first one because that movie relies not entirely, it's a good film on its own, but it relies so much on you having this past history with Tracy and Hepburn. I would imagine it's the equivalent of like if you started watching Star Wars with The Force Awakens. Where it's just like, am I supposed to be excited that this old man is here saying we're home to this large bear? Like, what's the plan here?
It turns out I actually have seen Spencer Tracy in a movie before. He was in How the West Was Won.
Yes, yeah. And I'm willing to bet, Tom, you've seen another one, because did they make you read Inherit the Wind in high school?
Nope.
Oh, really? Okay, because that's one that's like a classic stable app. But in any event, I was aware of Adam's Rib because I feel like Target routinely, back when they had DVD sections, would either have like Adam's Rib or Desk Set or Woman of the Year. Like those kind of cycled out. And I think, honestly, were it not for one little thing that we'll see in the registry statement, if you were picking a Tracy Hepburn, there was just as much odds that they were going to go with Woman of the Year or Desk Set instead of Adam's Rib. They eventually do go with that. They eventually get them in, but I was kind of interested, like, why this one in particular? And again, we'll talk about the registry statement and where they have that. But I do think it's interesting in a way that, like, even I, as old Hollywood obsessive as I was, for some reason, had never gotten around to a Tracy Hepburn that was not Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, a movie that is, I'm going to say it, less funny than this one. I think it's fair to say less funny than this one.
I probably could have guessed that one.
It's always wild. We talked about Pictures at a Revolution on our Bonnie and Clyde episode, and it's always wild when I hear people refer to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner as a comedy. It's just because at least my recollection of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is there's one joke at the very beginning when they go, you married a man, he's a doctor, he's black, and then the rest of the movie is just dealing with race issues in America in the late 60s. Not exactly a hoot and a holler.
Nothing funnier than Stanley Kramer trying to deal with an issue of the day in a 1960s picture.
Oh, well, Stanley Kramer, laugh riot, left and right.
Absolutely. Nobody better. It's Mel Brooks, Woody Allen, and Stanley Kramer. That's the holy trinity of comedy right there.
I would watch Mel Brooks's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, though.
I mean, that's Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, kind of. You know what? That's right. Shit, that is actually 100% what that is.
They're the common clay, morons.
Anyway, in any event,
I
do think that's interesting. Tom, we talk about this sometimes on the show too, of like this thing of like, well, we get around to it, and the thing is, like, Bella, you and I watched this film together. And, you and I will often watch kind of older films, and usually there's at least a moment or two in these older films that I'm watching that you look at and go, that hasn't aged great. Obviously the episode hasn't come out yet, but you came home when I was watching the movie that we're doing for our 100th episode, The Birth of a Nation, and very quickly saw some stuff that didn't age well there. Most of the movies we do on this show have some parts that haven't aged well.
Lots of tough times because when you explain it to people like what the show is, and we go, well, yeah, it started in '89, and the movies have to be like at least 10 years old, so it's going to be a while till we even get the stuff that was in our lifetimes, which means even by the time we get to those movies, we're still going to be dealing with, oh, right, we thought it was okay for Tom Hanks to do this for an entire movie.
What are you talking about? Cloud Atlas isn't in the registry yet.
I'm trying, buddy. But between me and you, things are in the works.
Sorry, but Bella, I was saying to you, like, this is one that we watched, and I don't think you came away with any kind of feeling of like this has aged poorly or anything like that, right?
Not necessarily, which I, like you said, is a bit of a rare occurrence in our home. Yeah, walking in toward, I think it was like the halfway point of Birth of a Nation, and immediately just walking straight around, like going downstairs. I'm like, I want no part in all of that.
Yeah, especially because, and we'll talk about it in the future, but it's like, it's one of those cases where that's a movie where no matter what point you walk in, it's bad. But at the same time, no matter how bad you think it is in the first half, the second half decides to go, oh, we can be worse. We could be so much worse.
Yeah, it's I think the closest thing in this movie that gets to like close to like, oh, that's uncomfortable now is when in they're doing the massages with each other and he just spanks her a lot, like and she's like, she's like, are you trying to hit me like for real? What the fuck is that? And you go, this is getting to a weird point.
But even that, like, and I picked up this the new time watching it, like, because I remember the first time I watched it, and first time you're watching a movie, you're not always like picking up on things as foreshadowing, right?
Speak for yourself.
But even that, like, the second time around watching it, it's at multiple points she gives him a hit on the behind, right?
Yeah,
like that's part of their playful stuff, and so you realize, an absolute credit to both now I want to make sure I get the name right, Garson Kanin, and also future Academy Award winner Ruth Gordon,
and not for writing.
Yeah. Did you? I don't know if I mentioned to you about. Do you know that the woman who co-wrote the script wins an Oscar like 20 years later for a horror movie?
Okay, I'm glad that there was a woman in the writers' room at least.
Yeah, it's so
the writers' room as if it was a fucking Apple TV show.
I mean, I'm glad that there was a woman, period.
Yes, no, so this is Ruth Gordon and Garson Kanin, who were married, right?
Well, Cooper was one of those kind of guys of that era that felt a little more like attuned into like women's movies and issues and stuff. Like you go on his Letterboxd and like you look at like his filmography or whatever, and the way it's like, it's a lot of like, oh, My Fair Lady and Philadelphia Story.
Well, I mean, and what's the most famous example? He was directing Gone with the Wind.
Yeah,
and he spent so much time focused on Scarlett and on Olivia de Havilland's character. I don't remember. He spent so much time focused on them that Clark Gable insisted that Q-Core be fired. Yeah, because he felt he wasn't getting enough attention, and also because George Q-Core was gay.
Well, that's another. Yeah.
Well, that's another important factor here, and also, how we look at the best friend, Kip, right? Kip. Yeah, and how Kip is played in this film.
Okay, see, that's something. Well, you texted me like, you texted me something about the gay best friend.
Yeah,
who lives across the hall was in something, and I kind of just
yes.
No, but like I kind of just took it as like, oh right, okay. But then rewatching it today, I'm like, wait a minute, why is he calling him the gay best friend? He's trying to fuck Katherine Hepburn so hard, and it's like. The end of the movie, he gets a gun pulled on him, a licorice gun, but still like.
So Kip is the kind of, because it's important to remember that, like, especially how we coded kind of I'll get into this just a little bit. Like, it's important to how we coded sort of what you would call the Nance, right? The gay best friend in those rom-coms, going all the way up to like the Doris Day, Rock Hudson movies, right? Where it was typically like Tony Randall playing that role, which is of course the ultimate irony that like throughout the 50s and 60s, Tony Randall, and even into the 70s, Tony Randall was known for playing like the effete, like, effeminate, like, non-virile man, and then he's still making babies at like 90. Like Tony Randall had a new baby when he was like 5 years away from kicking it.
Like literally cranking them out.
Like I remember he was on Letterman, just old as shit, being like, "I just had a son." Like, good on you, Tony. But the point is, like, the Nans in those days and the way these characters are played, you wouldn't have a character say, "I like men." You wouldn't do that. Honestly, in a lot of cases, they don't even know themselves. What you would have is it would be this woman has a male best friend who is effeminate, non-threatening. Spencer Tracy makes the comment in the movie. He's like, "Oh, it's almost like you're a man." And he goes, "Don't insult me like that," or something like that. And all of them would convince themselves, they would tell everybody, at least outwardly, like, "Well, the reason I haven't gotten married, I'm a confirmed bachelor because I just haven't met the right girl. And in fact, it's my best friend. If only she would marry me, we'd be the best of friends." And it's like, yeah, but there's nothing like, man, who are you kidding? And I think like most people in high school, I don't want to speak to everybody's experiences, but most people in high school, I've known a lot of girls who like they had a gay best friend for whom in high school they were probably less so now, but especially when we were growing up, who would just be like, "Why don't we go out?" And as the girl in that situation, they'd kind of have to go, "Oh, I don't know about that." Or conversely, you've been the guy in that situation where the girl you're dating has that one guy best friend where you're like, "Man, why you got to come for me like that? Like, why are you doing this? Why do you just have to trash me nonstop?" So I do think that's, certainly an element in how Kip is written and portrayed in this film.
I mean, it's just, he wants to fuck her. It's not even like he's confused or portrayed as like covering up
he
for
wants
anything.
to marry her, but it's not. There's nothing sexual to it.
Yeah,
he wants to fuck her. He wants to fuck her.
think-
He's like, he's trying to kiss her, and like he's got her in an embrace when Spencer Tracy walks in. Like,
I don't think he wants to fuck her though. Like he talked about how the reason that he wants her is because of proximity and because, well, she's his neighbor down, what is it, like down the hall.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think he wants to fuck her. I think he's just like, this is a really convenient thing. And frankly, I'm going to have more, you're going to have more fun with me than you will with your husband who you keep fighting with.
But you see, that makes me even more convinced that he's just trying to fuck her because, like, what's more convenient for me? Like a guy who's just fucking all the time and has to travel. I don't have to leave the apartment building anymore. You're there. And I can just now have sex. Knock, knock, knock. Want to do the deed. Let's get dirty. Oorah, oorah. Like, I don't know. Whatever. That's not important. There's all the stuff in this movie we need to deal with.
No, but I honestly, Tom, I do love that sometimes, and this is not the first time, but like when we come in to talk about a movie, especially with the guest, and both myself and the guest are going, like, to us, this character reads as gay coded, and in both cases that I can think of, you've been like, "What are you kidding? That guy struck me as a total pusshound." It's like that uncle at the family party who's like, Vincenzo over there, he's always got himself perfectly groomed and he's surrounded by girls. He must be killing it. Like it does feel like sometimes.
I'm like, am I fucking taking crazy pills? The fucking end of the movie, goddammit! Fuck you all. Fuck you.
No. Hey, listen, you know what? We're on video now. Hey, chat, let us know in the comments. Do you think, let all of our, let's be honest, over 60-year-old viewers, I know our demographic. If you're in the comments, let us know, is Kip in the closet or is Kip just crushing it left, right, and center? Let us know.
Listen,
and you know what? I'm going to say it. If you think he's coded as gay, #closet. And if you think he's straight, #crushing it. That's how you let us know.
I do think he's crushing it, just it's not pussy.
He's crushing it in buttholes.
You know what's fun about that is that every time we do one of these, like within a day or two, you always say something like, I just want to make sure I don't say something on microphone that like could come back and bite me. And then you just uttered that sentence.
Get fired from my job.
I bring out the best in people.
So let's let's get back to Adam's Rib, and in particular, before we get into what we think about the movie itself and not the sexuality of its characters, let's talk about what the
One
library.
very specific character.
I honestly,
he's trying to get into Adam's Rib.
Tom, I hope you commit. Honestly, Tom, I hope you commit to this as a bit so hard that no matter what movie we do in the future, you like in 20 years from now, you're just trying to go on. You know, Heath and Gyllenhaal really love their wives.
Shut up. This isn't a bit.
No, I know, but I hope. Yes, but Tom, I've known you long enough to know that when you do something sincerely and you know it gets a reaction out of me, you'll turn it into a bit just to get me agitated.
If I even remember doing this episode.
Okay, so before we talk about Adam's Rib proper, for all of the people we haven't lost already from that discussion, let's hear what the Library of Congress had to say. Here's what the National Film Registry had to say about Adam's Rib.
With an Oscar-nominated script by Ruth Gordon and Garson Kanin, Adam's Rib pokes fun at the double standard between the sexes. Spencer Tracy and Katherine Hepburn play husband and wife attorneys, each drawn to the same case of attempted murder. Judy Holliday, defending the sanctity of her marriage and family, intends only to frighten her philandering husband, played by Tom Ewell. His mistress, played by Jean Hagen, but tearfully ends up shooting and injuring the husband. Tracy argues that the case is open and shut, but Hepburn asserts that, if the defendant were a man, he'd be set free on the basis of the unwritten law. As the trial turns into a media circus, the couple's relationship is put to the test. Holliday's first screen triumph propelled her on to bigger roles, including Born Yesterday, for which she won an Academy Award. This film is also the debut of Ewell, who would become best known for his role opposite Marilyn Monroe in The 7-Year Itch, and Hagen, who would floor audiences as the ditzy blonde movie star with the shrill voice in Singin' in the Rain.
So there is something I find interesting about that registry statement in that, very often we say on this show, Tom, that the statements sometimes leave us with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
But I do think this statement answers the question I sort of had up top, which is why Adam's Rib over Desk Set or Woman of the Year or any of those? Because if you notice, despite this being a Tracy Hepburn movie, they don't talk that much about Tracy or Hepburn. They're more focused on Judy Holliday. They're focused on Tom Ewell. They're focused on Jean Hagen. And I think one of the things that is interesting that is perhaps lost to time for us living in, the 21st century, where even, those of us that obsess over this history, like it all kind of bleeds together. Before we started recording, I was joking to Tom that Ruth Gordon only exists in my brain as an old lady. Like she only exists as like Harold and Maude, Rosemary's Baby era Ruth Gordon. So it's weird to think of her back then. But I do think that for the scholars who were doing this induction in 92, the reason to favor Adam's Rib in part is it's not just Tracy and Hepburn, but look at the pedigree of talent that this thing launches. Now, not a lot of people today are necessarily talking about Tom Ewell or Jean Hagen, or even Judy Holliday. But it is impressive to see like a whole wave of landmark stars emerging from small roles in this movie,
Well, Judy Holliday this was supposed to be a vehicle to launch Judy Holliday at the very least Hepburn really wanted that to happen. Actually, originally that part, weirdly enough, Marilyn Monroe tested for the part of the wife. Obviously, she didn't get it. And also she was fairly unknown at the time. Also dark horse. But Judy she certainly wasn't as well known as she eventually became. But since Hepburn really wanted her in the role, they had this essentially be like her test for other roles, and obviously she knocked it out of the park. But Judy actually said that she didn't want that role in the beginning, and the reason for that is because she, quote, didn't want to play a part where somebody called her a fatso, which is interesting considering she later said that she later had a line calling herself that in the film. But a few days later, the word was removed from, or a few days after she originally rejected it, it was removed. She agreed to play the part.
That scene is so fucking funny because it's one of those scenes where, in a lesser movie, it would be like, oh, we cast a heavier woman, and like you kind of it's trying to like paint it like, oh well, maybe the guy's got a point, like his wife let her so, and then they just like he says she got fat, and then it cuts to her, and after hearing that and then looking at her the entire movie, you've never thought about her physicality at all, and you just then cut to her and just, what the fuck are you talking about?
It's so funny that like and Tom, this is something you and I have joked about off mic too, but like it is wild that like in the late 40s, early 50s Hollywood movies, they are describing like just mildly curvaceous women as fat in movies. Like, oh, this girl's got meat on her bones, whatever. And it's like it's a siren song, a decade later for Federico Fellini to show up and go, I feel like you people are not prepared for Italy. Let me show you. I'm going to show you a woman on the beach that young Guido Contini just falls apart for.
You've never seen the Mediterranean women.
Yeah. Like literally.
And then conversely, all the horror directors that come out of Italy going, oh, these are women. They're so beautiful. And they're driving me fucking crazy.
Yeah. And then you say, like I said, you see something like it's like, she got fat. And you're looking at, Judy Holliday going, what are you talking about? Cut to
Judy Holliday, who looks like she might actually have an eating disorder.
Yeah. Cut to decades later, La Dolce Vita. But no, Judy Holliday. I mean, that's the other thing that I think is impressive with this film, and there's, especially on this rewatching, the script really strikes you at how well balanced it is, and the smart choices it makes, because
it feels like a Coen Brothers script.
Well, to some degree, and I would also say, what it reminded me of too is When Harry Met Sally, insofar as the famous story with When Harry Met Sally is it was Rob Reiner and Nora Ephron, and Rob Reiner was like, I will write the Harry stuff, you write the Sally stuff. But they both, it wasn't done with the intention of like, oh, because I know men are right. Instead, it was like, we're both going to come at this from the angle of like, where are we wrong? Where are we kind of fuck ups? And I think, you said before, Tom, a lesser movie. I think the fact that Tom Yule is so repugnant, right? The fact that he's such a sleaze for the entire movie, and you can tell Spencer Tracy thinks he's a sleaze throughout the movie, is such a smart choice, because Hepburn goes into the movie, her character approaching this from the angle of like, oh, I bet if it was the opposite and this scumbag man shot at his wife for cheating, like she says in her closing statement, imagine it was this, if she shot him, they'd get him off. And she might not be wrong in terms of a jury or anything like that, but it's the fact that very wisely, Tracy, he never says it in the movie, but you could tell, like, if you pressed him, you'd be like, would you be upset if this man got shot? And his answer would be, only because I don't think anyone should be shot. Like, he has such disdain for him, and it's such a smart choice to not actually make the conflict of the movie man versus woman, right? Like that ultimately it's that they're having two different arguments. It's that he's a character of, it's the letter of the law, and it's the spirit of the law. It's such a smart choice.
Yeah, all that stuff is very good, and it does elevate it above what could have just been a simple battle of the sexes comedy, which, the battle of the sexes stuff in the movie is fun and funny and all that, but it really is the judicial stuff, the battle of wills, and where each person stands with what they believe in and how they attack what they believe in. Him being very like letter to the law. We have rules, we have regulations, we do things this way. Where she is very much a showboaty, ambulance chasing, look at me, almost like we're going to turn this whole thing into a circus to distract from what actually happened. And it's funny that we watched this movie this year because the juice is no longer loose. O.J. Simpson died, and it did remind me of because he died, and then I read the book that People vs. O.J. was based off of, and it just reminds you of it. Just was reminding me of that case where they know very clearly, like, oh, like we like he did it, like we know he did it, but let's throw like 100 different things. Racist cop conspiracy, maybe drug dealers did it, maybe she deserved it, like all sorts of that shit to distract everyone from like, well, no, there was literally no other possible answer than he cut his wife's goddamn head off, and we're just talking about something else, which is, yeah, sure, Johnny Cochran, let's talk about police brutality, but that actually doesn't have any bearing here because he did do it. Like,
well, I mean, I think it's a fascinating thing what this movie tries to balance, because one of the things that's fun about the turn that happens about halfway through, when it's clear to Tracy that he doesn't really care about winning or losing the case anymore, right? And I don't mean that in a negative sense, but like when you can see he's kind of like, I just want her to admit she's wrong.
Yeah.
And not wrong as in like, oh, this woman should go to jail even, but just like him trying to, he plays it up with this idea of like, okay, Amanda, he seems to be at the idea of like, Amanda, is your stance men and women should be treated equally, like fully equally, or is your stance there are gendered circumstances that we should factor in? Because there's that great moment that I think we all react to in a way, which is when she's pressing Ewell on the stand. She's like, have you ever hit your wife? Have you ever shoved your wife? Have you ever, and interrogating him on abusing his wife, right?
Yeah.
And he says, yeah. Right? And then Tracy steps up and goes, has your wife ever hit you? Has she ever shoved you? Has she ever, belittled you? All of that.
Yeah.
As a contemporary viewer, you watch that sequence, and because of the way we view things, of course, you watch that sequence, and even though he's saying like, yeah, well, of course you hit me, you go, well, that's no excuse. Like, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. You don't, and it's easy to think that the movie's trying to tell you that those things are equal, right?
Well, I think they're both aware of, like, Hepburn and Tracy, I think they're both aware of the biases that work in the other's favor. And you see that in the crying scene with where Amanda is just, I guess, pretending to cry after the massage scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see him just throw it back in her face and, do the whole, well, I could play that game too.
Mm-hmm.
But what's so, I think, what I found so interesting about it is I don't think necessarily that Amanda's ambulance chasing, to use your term, I don't think she's necessarily like going after this case because she just wants to represent someone scandalous or someone that will boost her rep in any way. Like, to me, it just comes off as more the ideology of it, and I don't think Hepburn necessarily made a spectacle of it.
Yeah,
I think Tracy played into that.
Okay,
I mean,
wait. Hold on. That's, you don't think she made a spectacle of the court case? You don't think having a strong woman pick Spencer Tracy up by one leg and lift him in the air and then be like, beforehand going, I have 300 women from 300 different walks of life I want to put on the stand and explain how different women can be. And the judge going, can't you just do 3? I mean, come on already. You don't think she made a fucking spectacle of the trial?
So what I'll say, to try and just jump in the middle for a second, because I see both sides of this. I agree here that I wouldn't use the term ambulance chaser either, because that's a different thing. An ambulance chaser.
Well, I just use it because she also jokingly refers to herself as one in the movie. She's not necessarily that. She's more the Cochran thing.
Well,
like I said.
Or even not even Cochran. She's an activist attorney, right? Like, in the actual legal system, you have people who take up cases because they want to defend a person, right? Mm-hmm. And then you also have people who take up cases because they want to defend a cause, right? And it's not like either one's invalid, but like, even think of, to go to the most extreme, the lawyer who defended Larry Flynt sure as fuck did not like Larry Flynt, right? He saw it as a free speech case, right? That's what that is. even somebody like on the other side of that, somebody who I think has, can do a lot of positive, but like somebody like Gloria Allred, right?
Mhm.
Very pointedly, she like chooses cases because she's like, this is, I want to make a change. I want to, make a positive change. At the same time, I will say, like, I think inarguably, to me, yes, Hepburn is turning the courtroom into a spectacle. But that is because at its core, this is a movie about two people, one of whom believes firmly that there is an inherent bias to the court, right? That's why Hepburn is relying so much, and the statement even says it, like the unwritten law, right? Whereas Tracy is a man who fully believes the law is the law, right? Like, and there is this thing of like what they represent in a way is and at the end of the day, there are two types of attorneys out there in general, which is there are the people who fully believe, and they have to believe, that the court treats everyone equally, right? They have to believe that everyone gets equal justice under the law. And there's the other type of attorney who knows, like, no. The wealthy get treated better, white people get treated better, men get treated better, and therefore I need to do whatever I have to do to secure justice for my client. I think what you see, which is kind of fun about the way that the film is structured, is that the one thing that is true of Amanda that you see throughout the film is that, and she comes around every time, but Amanda is the type of person who, in the moment, can dish it but can't take it.
Mhm.
Right? That's her chief flaw, is Amanda talks a big game about, oh, everybody's equal. But also, if at any point Tracy does something to her that she's done to him,
Yeah.
she immediately goes like, that's different. And the reason that's so perfect is throughout the whole court, she is doing these little stunts that I don't think are invalid, but she's doing these little stunts of like, I'm going to have the strong woman lift Spencer Tracy. I'm going to bring these women in. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to put my hat that he bought me on my client just to get a rise out of him. Right? And she does that because she's like, that's fair game. It's all fair. And when Spencer Tracy, in the end, shows up with a gun made out of licorice to prove his point, she's pissed as hell.
Yeah, she's about to
And she's
divorce
like,
you
Because
guys.
it's a gun.
It's a gun made of licorice.
Yeah, she didn't know that.
But it just goes to prove that,
That's-
like you can dish it and you can have this activist take of which me and Mike talk about this shit all the time. It's very easy to talk about, the principle of a thing, but in real life, some people, if it was a man that did it, he would have gotten off scot-free. And you go, okay, that's nice to say, but if you're the person who's getting a gun pulled on them, you're kind of just more upset about the fact that someone got a gun pulled on them than the fact that you just like read up on like feminist theory in your like junior year like sociology course.
I mean, that's kind of the thing. First of all, I want to clear the air on this. If Bella, if you're saying that a licorice pistol is a problem, then I'm gonna have to clear out half our snack cabinet because I stocked up on candy firearms. Just
Mike only eats foods if they are shaped like weapons.
Yeah.
So he can't have hot dogs. They have to be shaped like samurai swords.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Obviously.
This is all. No, I mean, because that's
a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to eat things that are going to kill me, they should at least look suicidal as well. You know what I mean?
Well, they should look cool. Because guns, they look cool. Let's be real. They look cool. And it's pretty cool when Spencer Tracy puts a gun in his mouth and then just bites on it. That's cool. Samurai swords, pretty cool. Weapons, pretty fun. I don't want psychos to have them. I don't want drug addicts to have them. But I like looking at, Sigourney Weaver blowing up aliens with weapons. That's cool.
Right. But, and on that point, I'm just going to say this. You want to talk about double standards, in situations, like that would be akin to like, I don't know, if at one point somebody mentioned like, my father used to have a samurai sword, like that would be a cool thing to have. And their, partner looked at them and went, no, you're not bringing a sword into this house. And then the next time you go to a comic convention, there's a wall full of swords. They stop and look at that wall full of swords and go, I'd like that one. That would be cool. That would be cool to have hanging on the wall. I'm just saying, if we're talking about, the kind of standards that get applied to things, all I'm saying.
I mean, to be fair, it would look really cool in the apartment. And also, I mean, I would be the one wielding it, not you. It's more fun that way.
I mean, honestly,
She's also
let's be real here. That is the thesis statement Ruth Gordon is getting at with the script of Adam's Rib. Amanda really is a character that kind of goes like, no, you don't understand. It's cool when I do it. When I do it, it's fun. When you do it, it's mean. That's what's so funny about, and honestly, that is, when you think about it, that's kind of Katherine Hepburn's characters through most of her comedies. She is the epitome of that Big Lebowski line, "You're not wrong, you're just an asshole."
You're not
right?
wrong,
Where like,
you're just an asshole. Yeah.
think about, because I know we've watched, like, think about Philadelphia Story, right? You're not going to say she's a bad. Tom, have you seen Philadelphia Story?
No, haven't seen that one yet.
So then, at the very least, Bringing Up Baby, right? We've all seen Bringing Up Baby here.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, we know that because it's one of, I'll say this, I'm like, one of three Criterion Blu-rays that Bella owns, right? 4? I think it's maybe up to 4 now.
I own 4?
Yes, Princess Bride. The fact that I can do this. Princess Bride, Bringing Up Baby, The Girl Can't Help It, and one of 2 copies of the movie Gilda that we have. We own 2 different Criterion Blu-rays of Gilda, a movie that neither of us has seen, for the record. But we have 2 of them.
I bought you Gilda because I know you had it, and I also bought The Girl Can't Help It and gave it to you as a present. So technically,
no, you bought Girl Can't Help It for yourself and said, I wanted to watch this.
No. Maybe,
Tom, while we bicker, did you want to write a song on a piano from Cole Porter? Did you want
to? No, because apparently you have to be gay to do that, and I ain't looking to get into some guy's rib cage, bro.
You know what? I hope this is your new stance, is that you're just like, oh, so what? So what? Just because he writes songs makes him gay? What are you doing, bro? What are you getting?
What are you doing? What are you getting at, huh, motherfucker? No, but sometimes I just talking about, because you just bringing up Baby. I still sometimes just randomly think of the scene at the end where they're like, oh my god, this is the trained leopard. She's out going for the wild one. And then just the hard cut to her dragging the wild leopard into the police station, not knowing she's got that is so fucking funny. Oh my god.
I mean,
good bit. Comedy's fun when it's good.
Well, that's the thing about Katherine Hepburn that makes her so fun to watch in comedies, is she is hyper aware of the vibe she gives off, right?
Yeah.
And what she does so well that I think very few people can do is she can portray an extraordinary level of confidence and bravado, right? And sort of, I don't know, depending on what wave you want to talk about, whether you want to call it feminist or proto-feminist, like, energy, Yeah. Very famously, she told Barbara Walters, I only own one dress and I've worn it once. And when Barbara Walters said, will you ever wear a dress again? Hepburn said, I'll wear it to your funeral, which is just a baller response to any question. But I think what works with Hepburn and why she's so good is she is also aware of how that character can be funny, right? Like, she is aware that she's like, I have my principles and I'm going to stand by them. I also know that makes me pompous, right? And that's why her and Tracy play off each other so well. That's also why, in a different element, her and Cary Grant play off each other so well. Because in both cases, you're like, everybody here needs their ego deflated by like 5 or 10 degrees, I mean, that's why.
I wonder if that also makes her. I wonder if that limits her in some way as well, then, because it's like, that does feel very, like, not to say that her acting is in any way one-dimensional, but like, it can come off one-dimensional. Certainly now we see so many like career women portrayed the same way that she was in Adam's Rib. And I just think it's interesting because at the time, like, even like Dorothy Parker said that like she runs the gamut of emotions from A to B. Like, she's not exactly getting she's not necessarily getting praise from other women that are top of their field.
She had ebbs and flows in her career, Hepburn, obviously, like, because she kind of had this thing where at first she was the young ingenue, right? Like, she's still, I'm going to say it. I hope folks don't, think I'm being disrespectful to Saoirse Ronan or anybody, but she's still the best Joe Marsh in any Little Women adaptation, as far as I'm concerned.
Because Saoirse Ronan's not playing Joe Marsh; she's playing Greta Gerwig. Like, let's be real here.
And also the fact that Katherine Hepburn is the only actress alive who can say Christopher Columbus, and you're just like, hell yeah, keep going. But you know, I think what you're talking about, Bella, is absolutely true. She there was a popularity for her type of character for a period of time, right? Her go-getter, like, you know, wearing pants in the family kind of angle until, and it's funny, it's this thing that I think happens to movie stars a lot. It doesn't happen, maybe it happens sometimes, but it doesn't happen as much anymore because we just don't have movie stars. But I would say this is a weird comparison, but stick with me, right? It kind of happened to Ryan Reynolds recently, insofar as he found his lane and people were just like, hey, anytime you do this smarmy character, this specific type of like, this is your whole personality, audiences are going to give it billions upon billions of dollars. We like when you do that. So keep doing that. And then eventually...
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, eventually people turned on that. I mean, he's still making money right now, but like I'm seeing all these critics kind of turn around and go like, well, when is he going to do something else? And Hepburn would have loved to do more, and she, of course, does. But it is this thing of like, yeah, she's doing a lot of like, I'm wearing the pants in the rom-com roles because you guys are paying for them. You know.
Well, I mean, it's also just that it's just that thing about movie stars, you know, like this isn't to denigrate her acting chops or whatever, but she's a movie star. She's like a Cary Grant, like a Jimmy Stewart, like a John Wayne. You're not gonna get like disappearing acts performance-wise from them where you go, oh my God, that was Katherine Hepburn. I can't believe it. You know, but being able to find the degrees within that persona, because like there's not that much that Jimmy Stewart's doing differently in Rear Window that he is in It's a Wonderful Life. He's still got that voice. He's still got his mannerisms, but just by putting that in a different context and with some slightly sleazier dialogue, you go, oh, this guy's a weird voyeuristic creep.
I only laugh because that meme is making the rounds again. I saw somebody tweet, you know that Rear Window meme they do where it's Grace Kelly with a speech bubble going, babe, please have sex with me. I'm so into you. And then Jimmy Stewart going, not now, there's a murder across the street. I saw somebody retweet that today just going, I'd never seen Rear Window, but I'd seen the meme a bunch of times, and holy shit, that is the movie, isn't it?
It is. I mean, that is
really
the movie. That is the movie. That's also like half of Brian De Palma's filmography.
And it's also kind of Vertigo, because never forget, Jimmy Stewart's best friend is a woman who's like, would you like to see all of the bras that I have? And he's like, no, I'm going to go to the museum.
Would you like to test the tensile strength of this bed that I have in my house? No, I think I'm going to go follow this woman around San Francisco, and I think I'm going to make her look like another broad. I just pulled that impression out of nowhere. Yeah. I don't know where that came from.
But in any event, that takes us all back to the Katherine Hepburn of it all. And I do love, by the way, Bill, the Dorothy Parker quote that you made sure to note, because it's so mean. It's so needlessly mean.
Oh, I love it. I think it's I don't think it's accurate. And I believe she later said that like it was meant to be a joke or it wasn't meant to be taken seriously, but I just love how catty it is.
We need more of that shit stirring in modern day Hollywood. You know,
I don't know, man. I don't know, man, because I feel like you're talking about that, but let's bear in mind that Dorothy Parker quote was like spoken into a cauldron from which Pauline Kael emerged. You know, I'm just saying, like that's
true. But I mean, at this point, we're already beyond like the Rubicon of like film discourse and discussion is just so broken because everyone can only watch things that reflect their like experiences, and anything that's not the like 4 movies they like is bad. And we've already like we talk about it all the time about how like, you know, the morality police, if you like this movie, you're bad. If you don't like this movie, you're bad. So it's just like, it's like, you know what, just fucking just pull out the fucking revolvers, draw fill your hands, you sons of bitches, and like, let's get dirty. Just start calling each other cocksuckers. Start calling each other fucking just the runts of the litter that just managed to survive getting strangled in a river. Like, let's go fucking hard, bro.
Can I tell you what the difference is between those? That I think anyway is that Dorothy Parker makes a comment like that about Katherine Hepburn and seemingly doesn't realize that the comment's going to get back to Katherine Hepburn. Whereas now the people who say those awful things about celebrities want to make sure those celebrities hear them. They just ask them about it to their face, and it's like, that's the difference, bro. Like, it's if you want to like pithily write in the New Yorker like Katherine Hepburn can't act, that's one thing. But now they want to just like show up at the press conference and go like, tell me about why your marriage failed. Like that's which is a thing that we saw happen to somebody yesterday.
So fucking weird.
What
Wrestling people are such a weird.
I'm sorry, I'm not taking us off the sale, but were you in the room for that, Bella, or had you gone to the bathroom when some reporter asked Mercedes Varnado about her divorce at the AEW All In Media Scrum?
Oh, yes. And then she kept trying to like change the subject and like try to make a joke out of it, and then they just kept pressing. Yeah.
So to bring it back to Jimmy Stewart, which will then bring it back to the movie, and I say this with all three of us being members of the media to one degree or another, I think more people need to take a page out of Jimmy Stewart's book from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and just start hitting reporters. I think once in a while, just go around for 5 minutes and just start clocking them, and it'll solve a lot of problems.
I mean, listen, I am very much a firm proponent of some people do just need to get their shit rocked every now and then. No, because I mean, genuinely, like, you think about it, like when you talk about the way like society has progressed, and because you're talking about this movie and how double standards and how nobody really cared that like this guy's a wife beater and all that, and like the way things have changed. Wife beating, not good, not great, but in like elementary school and middle school, like, there are those kids that should be getting their asses get at least once get their asses absolutely handed to them, and we would have so many fewer people that are happy that The Acolyte got canceled.
Well, I mean, I'll say with that, and that's kind of what this movie is ultimately about, because it's obviously Ruth Gordon and her husband wrote this together. They apparently wrote it based on a number of different people, including they had friends who were real life lawyers, Dorothy and William Dwight Whitney, who were both representing opposite sides of the actor Raymond Massey, right?
Yeah,
they were representing both sides of his divorce from Adrienne Allen, right? And what's crazy is Dorothy Whitney was representing Massey, and her husband was representing Massey's soon-to-be ex-wife. And the lawyer couple themselves split up to ultimately marry their clients.
That's great.
So that's where Ruth and her husband got the idea. And I do think one thing that's really good about this film and so smart about it is, at the end of the day, the murder case itself doesn't matter, right? So much so that, without peeling back the curtain too much, because obviously we record these out of order, Tom and I do actually know what each other's registry picks are for this film. And I just remember, Tom, when you told me what it was, it had been a while since I watched it. It'd been months since I watched this, and you were like, oh, this is what I'm picking for Adam's Rib. I had a reaction of, why? What do you mean? Why? And then like I watched the movie again. I'm like, oh yeah, no, this makes total sense. But at the time I was like, wow, that's a dark choice. Oh, this is a dark movie. But the murder doesn't matter so much in this, or the attempted murder doesn't matter so much in this film. So much as it is a story of these two people who are in love, who are married, trying to find the lines, right? There are multiple points in this movie where Tracy is essentially going like, hey man, like, don't cross this line. Like, just don't do this. Like, let's be respectful of each other. I mean, to the point where like Hepburn decides to take the case and she doesn't even want to tell him. Yeah. Right? Because she knows like this is gonna be an issue. And what's fun about it, in a way, is how often Tracy understands, like, I can say to my wife sincerely, hey, don't do this thing. And that's not going to deter her. But if I give her a taste of her own medicine, that's going to be the thing that gets her to come around. You know, like if I try and say to my wife sincerely, like, hey man, like what you did is wrong. I wish you'd apologize. She's going to go, absolutely not. You go to hell. But if he starts crying, she'll be like, why don't we go to the cabin? I don't care about the taxes. Why don't we go? No matter how many times he's like, because he says to her, like, you're making a mockery of the law. You're making a mockery of the court. No one has the right to kill anyone. And she's like, you go to hell. And then he shows up with a gun and she goes, nobody has the right to kill anyone. Oh. Like, I do kind of love.
Fuck you. Fuck you, man.
I love that beat where she's so upset. Nobody has the right to. Oh,
fuck. And literally, just like if this was made in like the post Hayes Code, she'd go, oh, fuck you, you piece of shit.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
Listen, it's good. It's good stuff. Yeah, I mean, I love so much of the comedy of it. I love that it has it seems like it has contempt for both clients, that she's like an absolute imbecile. And it's not to say that the movie's on his side for like hitting her and cheating on her, but it's like these are just two people that should not be in the same room together.
Well, and
they're just like, and then like Lena Lamont, which I know that's not her name, that's her singing in it.
Gene Hagen,
which just hearing that voice for the first time, it's like I was looking at my phone for a bit, and then I hear that voice, I'm like, what the fuck? Is that her?
It's because I had only seen Gene Hagen, I think. I might have seen it, but I'd seen her, I know her from Singing in the Rain so well, and I remember watching Adam Through the Bella the first time and just having the thought of, oh, so it's like that all the time.
Yeah, right. I was like, is this like just like Lena Lamont was doing something like making fun of this kind of performer, or is that her? And then I'm like, oh my god, it's her. Oh, that is just all the time.
But no, I mean, I think even Tom, because you said like, oh, the woman's the wife, she's a bit of a dummy, and I think what's so smart about it is the movie is never against her, right?
Never against her.
The movie is never against her. I think the script is even like, the script takes the approach. I think anyway, the script takes the approach to her shooting him of its view on it is, you shouldn't have done that, but I get it.
Yeah.
What I love is that the first scene where Hepburn is actually meeting with her as a client, you see Katherine Hepburn kind of willing herself into.
Yeah.
Because there's that moment when she's like, well, of course, you had no other choice. No, I had no other choice. You weren't planning on shooting him. No, I planned it. Well, how about?
What did you feel after you shot him? I was hungry.
And you just see Hepburn just go, how about you let me figure out how you felt about it? Like, just, you feel her go into the room with the righteous feeling of like, this is a person, like, this person is flawless. This person, it's going to be an easy open and shut. And then after talking to her for like 10 minutes, just that approach of, all right, it's going to take some work. It's going to, okay, but you had it, I'm with you. Yeah, it's very fun.
Well, she's like the classic Roxy Hart. Like, she is just, you're really trying to direct her, and she just would not shut up. Not that she should tell her story, even if she wanted to actually murder her husband. Why not?
She should speak her truth. Yes, queen.
Haven't we all wanted the same?
I'm just gonna.
I want somebody to shoot me.
No, you know what's really fun is this will be the first episode that is released under the title Exhibit A. This will be really good.
I was gonna make that joke before when you guys said you both had copies of Gilda. I'm like, oh, it's nice that you guys are buying your own copies of movies for the inevitable end of this relationship.
That was it. I was going to do the joke up top. I forgot that this is the second time we've recorded a podcast together with just a door separating us, and it'll hopefully be the last time we do that in this apartment, and it's up to the audience to figure out whether that means we're moving or we're splitting up. Let them figure it out. Let them guess. You know what, audience? Tell us in the chat. Tell us in the chat. And if you think we're moving to a bigger place, hashtag closet, and if you think we're splitting up, hashtag crushing it.
I mean, spoiler, there's no wrong answer.
Buddy, I'm crushing that apartment hunt. Which also, just a side tangent. If you're not watching Kite Man, the spinoff of Harley Quinn, it's so funny because Kite Man wants to get a power to impress Golden Glider, and he gets the douchebag power, and he changes from Kite Man to Beast Mode, and his power is just being able to flip people off and make them slap themselves or give themselves wedgies and shit. So, Beast Mode.
I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be real, and then we'll get back to Adam's Rib. But I'm gonna be real, Tom. It's gonna be a long time before I show, Bella and I watch Harley Quinn or Kite Man, because Bella has just picked up and is about a quarter of the way through Court of Owls, and has seemed to start to come around to the idea of like maybe this whole Batman thing isn't dumb. So I think it's gonna be a long time before we get to anything that makes her think about Kite Man.
It's not
because that
Batman.
does all the work.
Batman's not the problem. I'm all for Batman. Batman rules. I just don't want to do comics. I'll get around to it. I just don't want to do it.
Listen, you cannot deprive this poor woman who already has to deal with you every day of her life. You cannot deprive her of Bane.
Well, that's
that version.
I found the one comic book character I care about that has a movie coming out later, and that's the only thing that matters to me.
We can't get into this now. We absolutely cannot, because Tom will. We can't get into this now.
I mean, you can get into Ribs.
She is talking about Craven. So let me explain, Tom.
Oh
So when we went to see, I think it was
seen him
when we went to see Alien Romulus, right? Because again, it's worth noting, Bella really wants to see Craven, has never read a Craven comic, knows something about Craven. When we went to see
filmmakers.
when we went to see Alien Romulus, though, they start the trailer for Craven, and Russell Crowe is speaking Russian in a way that is questionable. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson appears on screen, who, again, Bella's already signed on for. And mind you, this came right after the Gladiator 2 trailer, which meant I could have... Honestly, can I tell you, during the trailer for Gladiator 2, I could put a real gun in my mouth and Bella would just be like, I don't care. Not right now.
After that 1-2 punch, there would have been an immaculate conception and you would have been surprised.
Right. So Craven comes on and Aaron Taylor Johnson walks on screen and starts speaking Russian and does it, according to her, well. And
okay, it's not well. It's like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 2. But honestly, everybody else is at a 1. So,
and it's.
I'm sorry. Are you trying to tell me that Russell Crowe is not putting in the work to do an accurate accent? As an Italian, I will tell you that his work in The Pope's Exorcist is as good as anything you will find in any Fellini movie, in any De Sica movie, in any Argento movie. He is doing the Mediterranean land a great service.
He is. I will say this. He is as good at a Russian accent as he is at singing.
Ooh.
Putting that out there.
Taking old Russell the woodshed. But in any event, let's get back to Adam's Rib. Let's get back to... Now, again, let's be clear. If Kip was played by, either a Paul Mescal or an Aaron Taylor Johnson, then in that case... maybe Hepburn makes a different choice is all I'm getting at here. It's a different scenario.
I don't know. She seems to like the old boys.
That's true.
She might be more into Russell Crowe doing one of his various quote unquote accents in his Orson Welles phase of his career than any of the young boys that populate cinema these days.
By the way, for the record, Tom, the thing you brought up about not Tom Yule, the guy who plays Kip, is the fact that I texted you going, did you know the guy that plays Kip was in an American remake of M?
That's right. It was that, yes.
Which is, I did not know before I looked that up that there was an American remake of M, which means I guarantee you it's terrible.
Oh, yeah. But also, that's kind of fitting because that's another movie discussing, justice and the law and, like, what's the right thing to do and
and
also weird moral ambiguity
and also very
there's
funny.
Also just one random guy there, random gay guy there.
And laugh a minute.
Everybody,
when I sit down
every time Peter Lorre chokes out a child, I'm just hooting and hollering, firing off my 6-shooters, just high-fiving everyone on the block, ringing their doorbells, being like, "Hey, he killed another one, man."
The best part of this is anytime we go off on these kind of tears and like make these jokes about movies, a day or two later, Bella will not know which things we're being sarcastic about and serious. So later, I guarantee, like, she'll just be like, I'll be at work, on Thursday, and she'll text me angrily and go, I just wanted to relax. I wanted to laugh at something, so I looked up that comedy M you and Tom were talking about. It's full of dead children. When does it get funny?
Pretty funny.
When does
That kid's pretty funny.
In any event, let's somehow get back to Adam's rib somehow. But one of the things, I do actually, I was thinking about this before, Bella, you were talking about like kind of this not stereotypical character that Hepburn plays, but that very like take no bullshit, feministy character that Hepburn often got siloed in. And I think Adam's rib and the relationship they have in this movie is a testament to what a lot of contemporary versions of this get wrong. Which is, I think a lot of contemporary versions of this kind of character are far too one note, right? Like they often write these type of women characters, and you could disagree but I feel like they often kind of write these type of women characters where if their persona is, oh, men, like these chauvinist men, they're terrible. They're the worst. They also are like, they're written as, and I mean this even from female screenwriters, they tend to also put them in like a stereotypical, like Taming of the Shrew type shrillness. And one thing that this movie does so smartly is she's fighting this case. Her and her husband do love each other, and also she is very sexually driven, and she's very
also
playful and
goofy
fun.
As shit. Yeah,
yes.
she's a goofball. He's a goofball. He may take work more seriously, but he'll still take a moment to knock his pencil off the desk so they can look at each other under the table and like wink at each other and make silly faces. That's the thing that, like Mike said, movies today, or even like 10, 20 years later, once Stanley Kramer starts getting going. I'm taking Stanley to the woodshed today. I'm sorry. Not really, but fuck you, Stanley. Sorry, but fuck you. Like she would be like, a man-hating, like unfun, just miserable, just pain in the ass, where you go like, no, I get why this guy who's, you wouldn't think based on his beliefs and his like whole thing would want to go for her. Because if you're not into that, that could be very annoying having to deal with someone that high energy and that, whatever. They love each other, and they're doofies. They're doofy. They're doofy.
You were saying, Bill?
Yeah. No, they like. I think a lesser film would have Amanda be deeply desexualized, and she is a really like sexual character. They have when they're showing that home movie and like they fade to black when they go into their barn, like she's not desexualized, she is sexual, she's also not man-hating. You never really see her like be disparaging towards men until either Spencer does something to her or when Kip does something to her. The only time she really gets up in arms about it is when Kip tries to kiss her and she says that you're behaving like a man. Again, I don't think that many modern movies now quite get that. Like she would have a stick up her ass now, and she does, and Katherine doesn't.
And I think, you make a great point there too, and why I think, Ruth Gordon's, script, and her and her husband's script is so smart, is the fact that you just made a great point, which is you don't actually see her really face any opposition, not only have, be anti-man in the movie, but also face no opposition from a man in the movie until those points, right? A lesser film would also write Spencer Tracy as patronizing, right? It would write him as like, when she brings in the paper, have him be like, that's a good dear. Go make dinner or something like that. You know, it would give her some kind of masculine opposition to explain her drive to take on this case, right?
Yeah.
But instead, when she steps forward and she's like, well, this woman, she'd be, you know, she'd get off if she was a man, and she takes a stance. Smartly, this movie doesn't include some scene to kind of justify that stance, right? I feel like too many scripts today would include some sequence where, like, I don't know, Katherine Hepburn turns on the radio and hears some like right-wing, you know, radio guy go, that woman's gonna fry in the electric chair, and that's why she takes up
Or
a
she's
cause.
got like some backstory where like she went to law school and she had to deal with like a misogynistic professor or whatever,
Right.
and like there'd be some, you know, save the cat screenwriting thing of like there's got to be a reason why she's doing this. Also, thing that I'd like that they never really delve into, but it's kind of like there subtextually. It's their money must come from her because he's a defense attorney. He works for the city. She's a private practice. She went to Yale.
He's a prosecutor, you mean?
Prosecutor, district attorney, excuse me. Yeah, he works for the city, district attorney. She went to Yale. She's a defense attorney. Yeah, and based on her like ability to kind of just do these things where she has that behavior of, oh, she doesn't have to worry about her consequences. And I don't know, that also gives it a little bit of like,
yeah,
she's her own woman, and that she's not beholden to Spencer Tracy.
Right, but I think that's also where they tend to like where the film leans into stereotypes a bit more, because she is portrayed as really masculine, at least like masculine for the time. Like when Judy says to Katherine that she doesn't smoke because it's not feminine, and when like the maid keeps making cracks at like how the maid has to do more of the housework because anytime that Katherine helps her, that it's just more work for the maid. She's always in pants. She does come off as a masculine woman for that time, and obviously now we wouldn't see it that way, but like she certainly has that energy. But also Katherine Hepburn just had that energy outside of the character. I mean, her character's name's literally Amanda, which for the record, it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be Madeline. But Cole Porter decided he didn't want to write a song with Madeline in the name.
Which I gotta say is I hope you appreciate that anecdote, Tom, because it's the closest I've ever been able to say, you know, Cole Porter bringing real Tom energy, which is, hey, Cole, we need you to write a song for this movie for Madeline. I don't like the name Madeline. Call her Amanda. Well, because you know the second part of that is that he's like, call her Amanda. It's a better name to write music to. And they were like, fine, we'll call her Amanda. You know why he wanted her name changed to Amanda?
You already had a song with Amanda in it?
Not even that. He had written a song that he had thrown away called So Long Samoa about a trip he made to the South Pacific, and was just like, well, Amanda has enough syllables that I could just change it to So Long Amanda.
What a king.
And then I get a paycheck.
What a king. Love that energy. We love that kind of energy.
It took him 8 days to figure that out too, which, I mean, that's 7 days too long in my opinion. But
listen, this is by like 1940. Cole Porter was pretty loaded by this point. I mean, on the day-to-day, like I'm gonna just gonna assume that it took him 8 days to sober up enough to type the letter. You know what I'm saying? Like, God bless him. But
again, my kind of guy. Love that energy.
Yeah. In any event, one of the things we're talking about with Amanda, though, I do think it's an interesting dynamic of, is it possible? You know, obviously there's a world where Amanda is bringing that masculine energy because, as you put it, you know, that kind of masculine energy because that's what she has to do to compete in a man's world. But there's also an element of, when you combine, Bella, what you're saying about the kind of not traditionally feminine persona that she displays, and also what Tom's talking about, which is the movie giving the impression that not only does she make money, but it's entirely possible she comes from money, given her education and given the way that she approaches these causes, that there is an additional conflict between them where there is a question to some degree of like, like you see, honestly, with a lot of people, we know this with people who, a lot of people I know, who are involved in activism and are the loudest voices in activism, where you're like, but what is your connection to this? You know what I mean? Like, you're talking a lot about, I want to help the common man and I want to help, the common woman, but what connection do you actually have to these people? Like, what is your, are you seeing these people as people, or are you seeing them as an ideological cause? And that's why I do love, as you mentioned, that scene at the beginning with the, oh, don't smoke, I don't think it's feminine, right? If Hepburn hadn't already agreed to take on this case, does she do so? If she's actually met the woman, if she actually knows the woman, she does have that moment there where she's like, I kind of wish you weren't the person you are. I kind of wish maybe you could make my job easier.
And especially because it is, again, in the differences between the two. He's assigned the case, and he's like, God fucking damn it, the one case I didn't want. I know this is going to drive my wife crazy. He's like actually worried about his wife's reaction to it, where she chases the case, gets herself onto it, doesn't even think about his reaction to it, but then is, like you mentioned before, guilty and doesn't even want to bring it up to him, and brings it up to him while he's holding a fucking tray of martini glasses and spills them, which is just rude. As a former server, don't ever do anything while I'm holding martini glasses.
I think the key thing and the key difference between them is that both Amanda and Adam know what things are going to upset their partner. The difference is Adam knows what's going to piss off his wife before he does it, and Amanda knows what's going to piss off her husband immediately after she does it. Yeah. Right? Like, and that's why one of the smartest things that the script does, and it sets this up and then doesn't pay it off till the end, which is so clever, is for the beginning of this, even after she reveals she's taking on the case, Spencer Tracy is like, okay, he gets over it. And like you mentioned, he does the trick with the pencil where they look at each other under the table. They come home from court and they're still lovey-dovey. When does it change? It changes when her client comes in the hat.
Yep.
Because you can tell that for Spencer Tracy, there is this idea of, fine, if we're going to do this, we are lawyers in the courtroom and we are lovers at home. Do not mix the two. And when she brings the hat into it, Sorry, you were saying, Bo?
Oh, yeah, no, and there was that scene where the court reporter was asking about their nicknames, Pinky and Pinky, with the Y and the IE. And, they, instead of just keeping the separation of church and state, they didn't. And I think at that point, as well as the incident with the hat that you brought up, that was when the lines began to blur.
And that's I think kind of the thing is, Tracy clearly views this as there's laws, there's rules, like this is how the system works. And so when Hepburn starts doing these, courtroom stunts, when she's bringing in the strong woman, anything like that, for her, she sees that as kind of a this is an ends justify the means. Like, I've got to do what I got to do. But clearly that violates something for him. And, he doesn't. It's just I don't know. We keep saying oh, the script is so smart, but really it is just such a smart. It's a movie about people recognizing their faults, and, the other thing is, while it starts on an absurd premise, the one thing it doesn't do, which I think a lot of us hate in modern rom-coms, is too many modern romantic comedies. There's always a contrivance in the second act, right? Mm-hmm. There's always, we'll meet in the first act, then second act, some contrivance of, well, you saw me with another woman, but actually that woman was my cousin. Or, oh, yes, I was kissing that guy, but because he got a snake bite on his lip and I was draining the poison, or whatever stupid thing. Like a thing that doesn't happen and a thing that could be resolved just by somebody going, hey, I lied, or hey, you missaw something. But it doesn't happen. Whereas this movie, it escalates so well, right? That by the second act, yeah, things are fraught. There's no one thing that's going to solve it, right? Everything has just built on itself so well. It's that structure of there's no this happens and then this happens. It's always this happens, therefore this, or but this. You know, it just builds so well throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I don't know. Is there anything else left to talk about with this movie?
Yeah, I mean, again, it feels like it's dumb because it feels like there's a lot of meat on the bone, but at the same time, like at a certain point, you're just digging deeper and deeper into a movie that does not need to be dug into for 5 hours. You know,
no, and
because
I mean,
it is to dissect it is almost to ruin it, but.
To dissect it is almost to ruin it, and we've basically covered like most of the stuff that there is.
You know what?
Without diving.
There is one thing I want to address. There is one thing besides the fact. Besides the fact that like obviously George Cukor directs Judy Holliday later, things like that. But the one thing I want to address is the little thing that they do in this. Like you see sometimes, you see it in like The Awful Truth or something, which are those little like handmade curtains and stage sets that they use as interstitials between the scenes, right? Which you watch that, and my first note in the whole thing was like, man, we really used to put effort into these things.
We used to be a country.
We really used to try. But with that being said, as Tom, sorry.
I wanted to save it until after we got through all the discussion and everything, but I find it interesting that the registry statement is what it is because when I rewatched the movie and thinking about why is this movie inducted in the fourth year, sure, whatever. I only host the show. Thinking like, well, that's pretty early. Why this? And something hit me. The movie about sexual politics and the differences between how men are treated and women are treated in the eyes of the law and all that stuff. And this is 2 years after Clarence Thomas gets on the Supreme Court.
Jesus, yeah, that's yep.
So I think
correct.
Bill Clinton just got nominated, was elected president for the first time. This was his first year in office, so this was 93. So it's December 93. He's been president for 11 months at this point. As we saw in the War Room, we already knew that man did not care what your status was. If you were a woman, you were getting fucked. So a lot of these discussions. I love that we have fucking cameras now.
Can't edit this.
No. So I think all of those kinds of talks were in the air because clearly none of that stuff was being discussed in the 80s. Because if you watch any comedy from the 80s, women were meat and they were not humans.
Well, hang on. And here's a little teaser for the next segment. There's one comedy from the 80s for which that's not true, and we will talk about that in a couple minutes. But before we do, Bella, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we wound down with our usual spiel?
No, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. Like, there is a lot of meat on this bone, like you said, but to like what you said, to dissect it would be to ruin it. Yeah. It's funny, we were just talking right before we started recording about how similar this is to a lot of the movies I watched growing up as a kid. In Russia, we had a lot of these rom-com-y type films, and like a lot of the humor just really transcends. I don't think there would ever be a Russian dub of the film. Maybe there is one. If there is, I would love to find it. But I feel like a lot of that humor would transcend culture.
We can always hire Russell Crowe to do it.
I'm sure he'd be great.
So with all that in mind, winding down as we always do, Tom, how do you think Adam's Rib did at the Academy Awards this year?
I don't know. I feel like since both of us were kind of like, what the fuck is Adam's Rib when we first kind of came onto it, and you spending a lot of time talking about Ruth Gordon and her husband, I'm just gonna say it probably got a screenplay nod, and I don't think it won, but I'll say I got nominated for screenplay.
You are correct. This is also a weird thing that worked out. This movie is released, I believe, in 49, but it ends up nominated alongside a bunch of 1950 movies. This is a year we've talked about a bunch before. And interestingly enough, we were talking a little bit about Judy Holliday and how this was a launch pad for her. Well, this is the year that Judy Holliday gets her Oscar. So Adam's Rib was not nominated for Best Picture. The Best Picture nominees that year were Born Yesterday, again, for which Judy Holliday wins the Oscar, Father of the Bride, King Solomon's Mines, and of course, Sunset Boulevard and the winner, All About Eve. This is that year. This is also the year, so Judy Holliday wins her Oscar, beating out All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard. What a crazy year. And Tom, you are correct. It was nominated for the category known as Best Story and Screenplay, which you could kind of just call Best Original Screenplay, I guess, kind of.
I guess,
It's nominated for Best Story and Screenplay, which it lost to Sunset Boulevard. So,
I mean,
if you're going to lose
to the best.
Yeah, right? Honestly, going to be Sunset Boulevard, another movie about how society treats women. Though, different, and also somebody gets shot. So, wins.
And an entirely different vibe.
Yeah, real different vibe.
Not very fond of humanity in that movie.
Well, Bella Zaydenberg, thank you so much for joining us once again, either voluntarily or under duress, depending on how you feel on the day. Honestly, I think.
Well, to pull back the curtain a little bit, she did this as a way to get out of kitchen duty because Mike holds an iron grip on his women, and she just didn't have to do any physical labor today.
It didn't get me out of kitchen duty. I did make dinner.
You did make dinner.
You're a piece of shit.
No, Bella made dinner, and I'm
gonna.
As soon as we finish this call, I'm about to go do all of the dishes.
Shoot him now, on camera.
My gun is made out of licorice. It's made out of licorice. I'm sorry.
All right, then shove it up his ass and put it next to his rib cage. I don't know, Adam's rib.
Tom, how do you think the human anatomy works?
I don't know. If you press hard enough, you can get to any part of the body.
So,
what?
Bella, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have anything you want to plug on the way out?
Not quite. I mean, obviously, go vote so you don't have to be stuck in a reality where you have to make dinner all the time and want to shoot your husband. But no, nothing really. Just I don't know. Go vote for a future, I guess.
Well, that's it. You're welcome back, obviously, anytime, which is often a thing that I say that at the end of these things all the time, but it feels extra weird considering we're literally just like on the other side of a door.
Out of the kitchen again.
No, like it's just weird saying that, like, you're welcome back anytime. Like, your desk is right over my shoulder. Your desk has been on camera this whole season. So it's weird saying it that way. But all that said, everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration, on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
All right, so my pick this episode is going to seem like a weird one, because I know Mike was a little surprised, as he mentioned in the episode, a little surprised when he saw it, but then you think about it, you go, oh, right, yeah, that makes sense. Sensationalistic court case about the battle of the sexes and gender politics and how relationships work and all that. A lot more poisonous, a lot more psychotic, a lot, just a lot. It's a Gone Girl, David Fincher movie. I think it plays as a great poisonous flip side of the same coin that Adam's Rib is playing with. It's also got maybe not a court case, but a battle of the court of public opinion. the circus of that, and how his, Rosamund Pike uses that to her advantage, and he has to try to turn it around, but he's not as good at it, and blah blah blah, and all that stuff. And how they come to a weird psychotic understanding that this ended up being like not on purpose, but like a weird like psychosexual kind of foreplay thing for them that kind of strengthened their relationship in a fucked up way, which is kind of how Adam's Rib ends, which is like, oh, we almost got divorced, but we're actually a better couple now because we both know our like things and all of that. So like, yeah, Gone Girl, great movie. I've liked Fincher's last two movies, but it's his last great movie thus far. And Fincher needs to be in the registry as often as possible. So, let's get Gone Girl in there.
When it came to mine, I was really thinking about, Tom went with the courtroom aspect. I was going more with the gender politics from a different angle, which is, of course, the role of women in the workplace and women kind of fighting back against misogyny and all of that. And, Tom made a comment in the episode about, well, in the 80s, comedies, were, very sexist. And I said there's one comedy that's not the case for, and it's one of the great comedies to come out of that decade, even though it does come out in 1980 on the dot. But nevertheless, one of the quintessential workplace comedies, one of the quintessential gender roles comedies, and also has a kind of like kidnapping-y, murder-y plot, not too dissimilar from Gone Girl in that regard, which makes me wonder how Gone Girl would have been if Dolly Parton had written a theme song for it. Because my selection for the registry is a movie that sometimes on this show, I'll talk about a movie that I'm picking and Tom's responsibility, that's not in yet. And I think this is 100% one of them, because how in the hell is it the year of our Lord 2024 and they still haven't put 9 to 5 in the National Film Registry? When you consider the heavy hitters, Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda, Dolly Parton holding that thing down, just a remarkable trio, an incredible theme song, one of the great comedies of all time. Just a perfect film, lightning in a bottle moment. I adapted into a musical, all of that. Just a remarkable work, and shocking it's not in the registry yet. So 9 to 5 should have been in the registry much earlier, and it should be now. So that's my pick, is 9 to 5.
Next week,
for our penultimate episode of the season, we are providing a feature-length commentary on Oscar Michaud's landmark race film, Within Our Gates.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natali and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kaya Lampar and edited by Mike Natali and Kaya Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time. Because we don't watch you, you're watching us.